So hello, everyone. Welcome to Cooking for Community Fridges, part of the National Day of Service and Biden inauguration in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you haven't yet, please introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're from and if you're involved with a community fridge. We have a huge group today, and we're here on Zoom, but we're also streaming on YouTube and Facebook. So hello, YouTube and Facebook folks. Please also introduce yourself in your chat or comment section. We have team members that are also monitoring those platforms. So you will be connected with us just as everybody on Zoom is. So if you're not really familiar with Zoom, this is a little housekeeping to start. If you're not really familiar with Zoom, you'll see chat at the bottom of your screen if you're on the computer. If you don't see it, just put your cursor there and it should pop up. If you're on an iPad, touch the top right. If you don't see anything, there'll be 3 dots and more, and then the chat will be in the drop down. And if you're on your phone, at the bottom of your phone on the right should be 3 dots, and again, chat will pop up. We highly encourage all of you to do social media and to let everybody know that you're here with us today. Our hashtags for the day are East Village Neighbors and hashtag Change Food. The national hashtag for the Day of Service is hashtag Day of Service. So the way today is going to work is I'm going to give introductions and a background, and then we'll do a Q&A with the panelists. We're then going to watch a couple cooking demos and then open things up to a Q&A with all of you. If you have a question, please put it in the chat on whatever platform you're on, and we will make sure to get to it. If we can't get to it today, we will make sure to follow up with you afterwards to answer. So the point of today and the point of the whole National Day of Service is to get you involved over the next year. This is just day one of hopefully future involvement. And we hope here that you guys will all want to be part of a community fridge. So let's go. Welcome again to Cooking for Community Fridges. I'm Diane Hatz. I'm the founder of the nonprofit Change Food, as well as East Village Neighbors. I'm also a founder of the East Village Neighbors Fridge in New York City, along with Edie Meyer and Sarita Akia, who are also here with us today. Okay, forgive me. I had to message my tech person because we're supposed to be spotlighted. So Edie is a native New Yorker who loves to get involved in her community. She works for an art tech company and loves visiting museums and galleries. She is also on the board of Queens Botanical Gardens and foster rescue dogs, along with her rescue terrier named Isla. So Sarita Akia. Sarita owns Smack, which is Sarita's Macaroni and Cheese, with her husband Caesar. In a previous life, she was a mechanical engineer, but has been slinging mac and cheese for almost 15 years now. When not at Smack, she performs with her all-South Asian female improv team. Sarita, I want an invite when you do a show. Annette Nielsen. Annette is an award-winning writer and has worked in the food world from production to consumption, policy, and programming for over 20 years. She currently serves as the general manager for Refectorio Harlem. She earned her MA in writing from Johns Hopkins and certification in nutrition and healthy living from Cornell University. She grew up in the Adirondacks, has lived in DC, and with her husband and child calls New York home. So to give you a little background, the mission of my nonprofit Change Food is to help build a healthier food system for people, animals, and the planet. I began research on a program called Planet Share a couple years ago, and what I started noticing is that there are groups in communities around the world that have started to grow and to share food for free. This is happening organically. It's not like a coordinated effort. And I thought it would be great to sort of document and to get all this information together, put it into a database so that other communities could see what people are doing and then also replicate it themselves. So can we start the slideshow, Tony? So during my research, I came across community fridges. Now, people aren't growing food specifically for community fridges, but that is something I do want to get into, getting community gardens to supply food. So community fridges were thought to have originated in Germany in 2014 as a way to combat food waste. So when food is discarded from restaurants and stores, it's not just thrown in trash with trash. It's usually bagged, a double bag and triple bag. So it's still good food. So people in Germany were just plugging fridges in outside and just putting food in there. It adapted itself a little. So next slide. So fast forward to last year, they really took off in the US last summer when the pandemic hit. There had been a couple community fridges before then, but they didn't really take off until the pandemic insurance ended, and people, it's unconscionable how much need there is for food now, but people really became desperate to get food. So if you're not, next slide, if you're not familiar with community fridges, it's all it is it's a refrigerator that's plugged in outside, and people leave what they can, take what they need. That's the whole motto behind it. As you can see from these images, people have gotten really creative with decorating them. They are a community art project in themselves, but they are also servicing a very, very, very great need. So next slide. I founded the East Village Neighbors in March when the pandemic hit. Edie joined not long after. So this is our fridge in the East Village, and that's Sarita putting her mac and cheese in the fridge. So we originally, with East Village Neighbors, when the pandemic hit, it hit New York City really hard. So we just organically got together. I think we had like 100 volunteers, and more than 100 volunteers. We would deliver food for people who were afraid to go outside. We would walk dogs. We would have conversation. Next slide. We would do almost anything. This is Edie's dog, Isla, here at the fridge. I cut it out, but there's pet food in the fridge. We do allow non-food items and pet food. But we also, we would do anything we could to help alleviate people's stress. So as I said, when the pandemic insurance ran out, we noticed that very few people were asking us to deliver food. So because of the research I'd done, next slide, because of the research I'd done, I thought it'd be a great way to help people in the neighborhood where we lived if we started a fridge. So we had a private Facebook group, and I just posted out on it and said, hey, we're thinking about this community fridge thing. So Caesar, you see Caesar there, Caesar responded immediately. He and Sarita are married. So Caesar was like, oh my God, Sarita and I were thinking of a community fridge also. So the four of us founded the community fridge within days, plugged it in, next slide, and somebody knocked it over. So we learned a very valuable lesson in our first couple days, which is don't just put a wobbly fridge out on the sidewalk that someone can just touch and tip. So we got a new fridge within days, folded it. We also have a food pantry, and then we were off and running. So next slide. We soon after, as I said, we started with the food pantry. As you can see, these are some of the dry goods on the right. It's funny, peanut butter, not funny, but peanut butter is a very, very, very highly desirable item. So we always try to keep that in there. And what is put in the fridge just depends on what people drop off. There is no set schedule. So next slide. The fridge and pantry are open 24/7. People simply leave off the food they want to share, and others take what they need anytime, day or night. Next. And what I love about this, can you tell who is picking up food and who is dropping off? You can't. And that's why I think this is such a beautiful community effort. There's no judgment. You just take and leave what you can or what you want. So next slide. The demand for food is so great that we have been told by volunteers that the food can empty out before the volunteers even get it all in there. We package and wrap everything. And people will start lining up as soon as they see someone who comes with food to it. Next slide. So having a community fridge, it seems like a simple idea, but it's not as easy as it might sound, which is what we're going to discuss today. And hopefully we're going to get you all excited so that all of you are going to want to start your own fridge if you don't have one in your community. I think that's the last slide. Oh, so this is here. Can you go back one, Tony? So I just want to mention, so this is a representation of the community. The top one with the women with the animated faces. They're called urban vermin. Though there's two women that go and they ask you, it's called dumpster diving. They take food out of like the CVS trash or other places. And again, it's bagged, it's packaged, it's clean. And they go around at night and secretly just put food into community fridges around New York City. The two women on the right, one of them, her name is Mackenzie. She did a fundraiser over the holiday and she bought personal care products from the money she raised and she put them in the fridge and she just reached out to us. We didn't ask her to do it. And these types of efforts, people are becoming very creative with the fridges and how they can help and how they can contribute. The bottom, that's Ali. He's the owner of East Village Organic in the East Village in New York City. Every week he gives us a huge bag of food that's still good, but it's going to have to be thrown out soon that we then put in the fridge. So we have on the left are two of our volunteers. We have volunteers that will go and pick up the food from businesses and take it to the fridge. So I think that's enough of me. Okay, thanks, Tony. So let's put us back on so we can get to our questions. We're going to start with Edie. Edie, what motivated you to volunteer with the East Village Neighbors in the first place?
Well, like a lot of people, when the pandemic hit in March, my work just really ground to a halt. So I'm stuck at home, not much to do. I'm not a good kind of sit around person. So I saw Diane's post about East Village Neighbors and immediately thought, oh, this is something I can do. Got involved with helping to coordinate the volunteers. I was actually outside of New York City, as I am right now, for a fair amount of the pandemic. So it was also a way for me to stay attached to my community without actually being right there in New York City. And I was amazed at how many volunteers. We actually had more volunteers sign up than we did have people requesting help, which was pretty incredible. And so many volunteers who were just so keen, even during the worst of the lockdown, they would go and help out and go shopping for people who needed help. So it really happened very quickly.
So can you also just talk a bit, I mentioned that doing a fridge is simple, but not simple. Can you explain about volunteering and why managing the fridge is more work than it might seem?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is two things that are, of course, really important is getting food in there. And we do try to kind of space out the donations as much as we can. Because obviously there are times when we get a lot of donations and there are times when the fridge gets empty. So trying to kind of balance the amount of food that goes in there, the types of food. So some are raw ingredients, some are cooked meals. I think that's important because people have different needs. And then also keeping the fridge clean and maintained is really important. So we have teams of volunteers who pick up donations, and we have a team of volunteers who clean the fridge. So we have a volunteer in the morning and one in the evening, just to make sure that everything is tidy and sanitary. And then, of course, the team that goes and picks up the donations.
And then can you explain how is that organized? Like, you don't have to get into the details of Airtable because I hate Airtable, but just because it's like you're making it sound like it's very simple, but it's involved. It's involved. Like there's Airtable and spreadsheets and Google and WhatsApp.
Yeah. So it took quite a while to set up a system. We have an amazing tech guy who donates his time to us. And he's been really instrumental in organizing all the volunteers. So we use Airtable. So I've got a schedule, and we also have WhatsApp groups to keep everybody, appraised of what's happening. If we've got a volunteer who can't do a pickup, they can just post into the WhatsApp group, and usually another volunteer will jump in and say, hey, we got it, we'll go do it. So we really all work together as well. And I think, a fringe benefit of this, which I hadn't really even thought of when I got involved, is all the volunteers working together and getting to know each other, and finding a sense of community has also been super important, because the volunteers are having a tough time too, and they may not be food insecure, but people are having difficulties with work and isolation, and so I think it's been helpful to the volunteers as well.
Well, what I found so crazy, I lived in the East Village for 25 years. I met more people and made more friends in the last, like the 3 months we did the fridge than in the previous 24 years that I lived there. Like it's a huge community builder. So Sarita, unmute yourself. So tell us, how'd you learn about fridges and become interested in having one at your restaurant?
So, like Edie, at the beginning of the pandemic, obviously there was a drastic change for pretty much everyone that we know of. And at the restaurant, we kind of had to get gear into survival mode. And we stayed open. We figured out a way to stay open safely. So we didn't close one day during the pandemic. And what was obviously exacerbated in our face, seeing it every day, was the need for food. We, for those of you that aren't in New York City, we are in the East Village of Manhattan, and we're on a main avenue on First Avenue and 12th Street. We're on a corner location. So it's a pretty highly trafficked area for the neighborhood. And it was just empty. I mean, we were probably one of the only businesses open within a 2 to 3 block range, at least a restaurant anyway. And what we would see is, regularly you always see someone or one or two people maybe a day coming asking for food, but it looked like a completely different country or even city. People were walking around, people were hungry, and my husband and I right away were like, oh gosh, we got to do something. We pivoted and we started feeding essential workers because there was a huge demand for that, and that took a lot of our time and effort for a few months, and literally just trying to stay alive as a restaurant and employ our staff and pay them. So this need and demand for feeding outside of who we were feeding was in the back of our minds, but we weren't acting on it as of yet. If people were coming and asking for food, we were giving it to them, but we didn't structure anything formal. And then we just started seeing on a lot of neighborhood websites, Gothamist, other things, these neighborhood fridges popping up. And my husband Caesar, who is a night owl, doesn't sleep, is always on, like, looking at reading articles, whatever. He kept saying, this community fridge thing, I think it's a good idea for us. And I agreed. It was just a matter of, we knew, especially I think me as a project manager, my previous life as an engineer, I knew that this was something that if we were going to start it, we couldn't stop it. Like, this is going to be something that we need to continue. So the two of us just can't do this on our own. And, the summer went through, we're still like every week we're talking about a community fridge. Like, how are we going to do this? And we just never made the next step. Sure enough, Caesar joins East Village Neighbors on Facebook, sees Diane's post. He's like, oh, very casually, he says to me, oh, by the way, there's this woman on East Village Neighbors, and she's asking for someone to host a fridge. And I'm like, respond, yes, this is what we're looking for. We need a partnership. And even then, it was still such an unknown for all of us. Like, it's a huge, very steep learning curve. Are we going to be able to maintain it? Are we going to be able to keep it full? Is it going to be something that's going to provide what we needed to provide? All of those questions were unanswered, but we are very lucky. I feel that we met up with Diane and Edie, a team who really wanted to make this happen. And then the wheels just started turning very fast.
I actually think that it's still a social experiment to see how sustainable long-term these will go. But I want to step back a bit. How did you get into opening and running a mac and cheese restaurant in the first place?
Yeah, so in our previous lifetime, I'm a mechanical engineer. My husband's an electrical engineer, and we were living in New Hampshire. But we love New York City. Like, we would come here regularly. So we made this promise shortly after we got married that we'd move to New York City one day. And then one day we're like, we keep saying one day, every month we're saying one day. So we quit our jobs, and 2 months sold everything we owned. And 2 months later, we landed a sublet in the East Village, thinking we would just take engineering jobs. That was the plan. That's what we knew what to do. But then, of course, as a true New Yorker, I felt like we were embracing this. We were eating out almost every meal. And I got very enamored by the niche restaurants and how good the food was. And I just came up with an idea randomly. I was like, the next place we eat for lunch should be a mac and cheese place, because we tried like a grilled cheese place. We'd gone to the peanut butter company, and sure enough, we're looking around. We're like on Chow Hound, which has all the food of this is 2005, so you don't have the Yelps and any of these other apps. Barely anyone has an iPhone, right? So we're looking around. We're like, Chow Hound keeps talking about mac and cheese, but not a restaurant dedicated to mac and cheese. And I couldn't drop the idea. My husband believed in it.
Were you known for mac and cheese, or were you just like, I like
So-
mac and cheese and I'm going to
No.
make a recipe? I'm a mechanical engineer. I can do it.
Yeah. So for us, we both love to cook. We are very much about like making food from scratch, and we just love to experiment. So it was more of like we were trying these niche restaurants out, and in the natural cycle of these comfort foods, we wanted to try out the mac and cheese niche restaurant. There wasn't one. And we were in that time and place. We had already quit our jobs. We hadn't taken new jobs yet. We wanted to own something of our own, but we thought it was going to be an engineering company because that's what we knew. I just, the timing of it. And it was just an idea that we both believed in. So we went down that path, and literally 9 months later, we opened up Smack, and now we're in our 15th year. So
Oh my God.
it's been a ride. It's been this.
Well, I think any restaurant is.
Yeah.
So, Annette, let's get you in here, seeing as we seem to be gabbing so much. Tell us about, you are affiliated with the Fridge in Harlem. Do you want to just tell us a bit about your experience with I know you're a volunteer, which is why I really wanted to have you on, because we sort of run it.
Yep.
So give us your experience with the Fridge there.
So I live in Harlem on 120th Street. And when the pandemic hit, we kind of had an official mayor of our block. And she was trying to come up with some ways of addressing, how all the kids gathered and, trying to make the block itself safe. We're right off Marcus Garvey Park. And so she got a safe street designation, which was wonderful because a whole block was, dedicated to activities. So I started working with that in terms of teaching cooking classes to kids outdoors, of course, and adults. And but there was all this other programming percolating, like, we had drum circles, and we had, Sunday suppers, for lack of a better, term. Like, we'd all bring a dish, and, we'd share, socially distanced, masked up, all that stuff. We had music performances, Friday night movies outside. So there was really a lot of activity. I got to meet more neighbors, as Edie, I think you said, the sense of community that is really, you don't even know your neighbors as much as, and you need to, especially in times like these. So during that time too, it was noted by our mayor, Georgia, who said, we really need to do something more around food access, and was able, we got funds together to get a fridge. And, as yours was, kind of tipped over, our first one was stolen. So, it happens, but it's just, we had a site partner in Setapani, the restaurant, on the corner of 120th and Lenox. So, the refrigerator is plugged in just outside of the restaurant. And so they assist on that end. And, it became this space where, everyone was encouraged to use the fridge. It wasn't, just for someone who you might think is being homeless, who was walking by and needed something to eat. The focus also became kind of more around fresh produce, because sometimes that's more challenging to get in a food pantry. And we didn't really look to have prepared foods, just because we knew that was going to probably require more attention. But, I signed on to kind of each week, one day a week, I would bring in fresh produce and also volunteer to clean the fridge. So, it's been a great exercise, I think, in community building, and also addressing this need that just keeps increasing as we go through the pandemic.
So you just mentioned community building. I also want to just learn a little more about you. I know that you recently started with Refectorio Harlem, and I'm in love with Massimo Bottura. I will state that publicly. But can you explain who he is and what it is and what you're going to be doing? Because I think that there is a correlation between that.
For sure. And it is all kind of tied in together. I mean, Massimo is Bottero is a well-known chef. You may know him as a Michelin starred chef in Italy. And, you know, he started this non-for-profit with his wife, Laura, called Food for Soul. And Food for Soul has, you know, started these refectorios, which means kind of restore or reclaim, which, you know, uses excess food kind of to you know, create meals and serve them with dignity and grace in a community space. And so they do this. The repertorios are started. They're global now, and you know, we have this one now in Harlem, and we also have one in San Francisco. Those are the two in the U.S. right at the moment. So Refectorio Harlem is going to have the site partner as Emmanuel AME Church, which is on 119th Street, a block away from where I live. And it's a 100-year-old church with a really rich history, and it had a food pantry at one time too. So the repertories also have an operational partner. So in our case, for Repertorio Harlem, our operational partner is Youth Action Youth Build. Youth Action Youth Build is known as having worked in the workforce development arena for jobs for youth, as the name kind of states. And they've started a Good Food Jobs program. And that has, the Good Food Jobs program has, you know, been in effect for about 3 years, whereas all of Youth Action Youth Build has been around for about 40. So, you know, they've got a long history, and, you know, we're excited to be having that as an element of the repertoire itself.
Now, have you done meals yet? Have you actually started serving?
So right now we're building out the space at the church. The kitchen is being built out, and the space is being, you know, created for all of this to happen soon once, you know, COVID allows for us to gather. But we have partnered with Hot Bread Kitchen, which many people may know is an incubator kitchen space, and working with their chefs, collective chefs. And so they are preparing meals, which we are then delivering to various community partners throughout Harlem, like Children's Aid and Pillars and African Services. And, you know, I've even distributed at Marcus Garvey Park over the holidays, No Women Left Behind. So we have you know, we're delivering 6 days a week, 600 meals a week are being prepared. They're beautifully prepared meals. And it's just, you know, it's really a nice way to keep people employed too, who might have had a small catering business that is not, you know, operational right at this time due to COVID.
Yeah, what I loved about them, and I don't know if Harlem is going to be the same, is I saw a video and it's white linen tablecloths. Guests, Michelin star chefs will come in and donate their time. It's repurposed food, so it's a lot of food that would have gone to waste. And it's food served with dignity. And volunteers come in and they're the servers. Like, I think that builds a sense of community, like fridges do, different but the same.
Yes, for sure. I think, you know, the whole dignity part of this is so important. And I think, you know, you guys have certainly done a lot with that, you know, with your East Village fridge. I think, you know, there should be no shame in all of this, you know,
Right.
for real. I mean, it's, you know,
we've even found some people will put things in and take things out.
Quite a few.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I don't like peppers, you know, I'll put those in, but I could use some, you know, tomato sauce.
I definitely have seen that evolution of our fridge too, since we opened in October. What was happening was when we filled it up at night, the morning would be super empty, right? We didn't see as much traffic during the day. Now, as time has gone on, I think, you know, what we really are trying to achieve also is to eliminate that stigma associated with taking free food, right? And I feel like we do have, yes, the word of the fridge is gone now, but people are feeling more and more comfortable showing up, talking to people, taking food from the fridge, as opposed to it having to be this like 2 a.m. I'm going to go to the fridge so no one sees me taking anything from the fridge. I've definitely seen a shift with that, which is wonderful. And like you said, Edie, it really is. There's people who will drop off food and then take food because they have this surplus of, they might be going to a pantry and getting 100 beets or something like that, but then they want to come and kind of do an exchange for this. And it really is a wonderful thing because it's something that I've actually had to work through even with my own staff. My staff has taken a sense of ownership of this fridge, but these guys have been working long hours for many years, and a lot of them don't understand why do people need to take food, right? Because we're working so hard, and it's been hard for us to get jobs. And so this has been like a very educational experience for them. And I've seen their change and their shift in attitude, and just how, I almost get teary thinking about just how that information is really changing how people see what it takes to feed and why people need food.
And who.
Exactly.
I mean, there's an
Exactly.
image I think that people have, and there are homeless that come, but I've talked to people who were former executives who had no savings, who lost their job, and who were just never thought that they would need something. And look, I have to be honest, years ago, I lost my job and I was walking through Tompkins Square Park, and this man came up to me. He was the Hare Krishna group, they feed people, and he just handed me a plate with no judgment. And I took it because the gift he was giving me, it was so beautiful. Like, I got tears in my eyes, and it was delicious food. It probably turned into divya in the end. Like, it was amazing, but the lack of judgment and the pure gift is actually one of the motivations behind me wanting to do the fridge, because I know what it's like to be in need and to be in that shock of my whole world has changed, and how am I going to get those basic needs met. So why else do you guys think fridges are important? Like why would a fridge be important when you could go to a food pantry? Or
empowerment, and giving people the opportunity to take what they would like to take, and not just be given, a bag of food that they may or may not want to use, and dignity, and that it's a community fridge. It's, like you said, there's no judgment. It belongs to the community, and people can take what they need and contribute as they want.
I think also a very practical thing, as a fridge, it's like a grab and go. You're not standing in line. You're not standing in line to have people walk by you on the sidewalk staring or looking at you while you're standing in line to grab food. It's a very quick thing that goes back to like the dignity part. I think that's it's very practical that way.
the other thing I think is really important that I didn't realize is that when you go to a food pantry and you're standing in line, you have to show ID, you have to fill out forms. There are so many people who are not documented, or for whatever reason, it could just be, embarrassment. I mean, there are people who have worked their whole life and are not comfortable with a handout as they see it. And this isn't a handout. This is community helping community, which is why I think these fridges are so important. So Annette, we're going to start with you, but I'd like to hear all of your feedback on, do you think these fridges solve the problem of hunger? And if not, what do you think needs to be done?
This is a very big question, and I think, I will say off the top, thank goodness we've had them. I would fear the number of people that would have, not either survived this pandemic or would be in such worse shape as a result of not having access to food wherever these fridges are set up. But, my first career was in politics and government. And I worked in DC. I worked for, 2 US senators that I really admired who were, worked across the aisle to get things done. And I think, our government needs to take the role back of caring for our country. And part of that is making sure people are fed. I mean, I don't know I don't remember the statistic of how many people are food insecure right now, but I know in New York City, the number is somewhere between 1.3 and 1.6 million individuals. And, a lot of that is children, right? I mean, we have to be real here. And part of, the numbers there, it's hard to get a real grasp on all of the numbers, for some of the reasons you have stated, Diane, because of IDs and having to do that. But, they're tracking data based on SNAP applications, what used to be food stamps, as well as unemployment data. So, some of this is not real secure data. So, I mean, we have to know that number is higher, right? And
It's undercounted.
Right, it's undercounted. And I think, we need overall better policy. We need to care. We need to be humane. We have to show some humanity and some compassion again as a government, and not, sweep the issue under the table just because some people are doing okay, or the minority of the population, a small percentage of the population is doing okay, and making lots of money. So I guess, for me, thankful, grateful that the fridges exist, but I want to see real action by our government and holding elected officials accountable on this topic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm jumping right now because I had interviewed Annette for a show I do 6 months ago or so, and I was very no, government is people on the street. After doing the fridge and seeing how much work it takes, and we're all volunteer, and we're without jobs, we need pay. It's a stopgap, it's a Band-Aid. It's not going to solve hunger. It's absolutely necessary right now, but we need either private individuals, private corporations, state or government to somehow seed in finances, because this is a way people could earn a living, to get training, to then go on to do other things if fridges were taken more seriously and people were actually employed to do it. But
right, and it does require a livable wage for everybody too.
Yeah.
It's not just getting a job. You have to be able to survive on that salary, and not have to have 3 jobs, piecemealing it together and trying to cobble some sort of healthcare support.
Right. So Sarita, Edie, do you have any thoughts or comments about why you think fridges are important?
Yeah, the other thing to mention is food waste, and that there are bigger organizations like a City Harvest, which is amazing, and they save a tremendous amount of food. But on a smaller level, with some of these smaller businesses that we work with, they really have a lot of food that still goes to waste. So one example is a bagel shop we were working with, and he was actually having trouble finding out how to dispose of his bagels, because if he put them out on the street, the bags would get ripped apart, there would get rats, the city was getting upset with him for having a mess. So it actually was helpful to him to have a place to give the bagels to. So I think, it's a great way of combating food waste as well.
I'm just going to pipe in very quickly and just to affirm what others have said about the sense of community. Obviously, huge thing is feeding people and eliminating food waste, but the sense of community that has grown from this one fridge and pantry that I've been exposed to alone is unbelievable. I've been living in the East Village for over 15 years, and the people that I've met in the past 3 to 4 months who are aligned, with what you're trying to do, you're aligned with each other. The business owners I've met, I've actually prided myself on meeting other business owners, and I'm like, now what have I been doing? I haven't met these people who've been donating to the fridge. Now I've got this whole other network of people that, again, we're aligned. We're motivated by the community, by our sense of community, and that's been so heartwarming, but also just really grounding. It's something that moving forward, you've made these alliances that you can do more together, obviously. And I find that business owners in general, sometimes we get into our bubbles because we're so much trying to keep our business alive, or, there's always, in a restaurant, there's always 800 things a day that could go wrong, right? And usually about 200 of them do. So this broke me from that to actually form more relationships within the community. And I think that like Edie, you've been saying, the volunteers have met each other. People who are using the fridge for food. I've met so many people. I've met so many of my neighbors in my complex who have been dropping off that I'd never met before. So it's these fridges are doing so much more than just providing food. And that was kind of an unexpected turn for me.
I think, and Edie, this.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say,
No, you finished. I'm changing the subject, so go ahead.
another quick thing is also the evolution of the community supporting the fridge. So at first I felt a lot of pressure to try and, okay, we'll go buy food for it. We're trying to keep it full. And now I walk by there, the other day I walked by and there was a young woman putting food in, and I introduced myself. I thought maybe she was one of our volunteers. She said, "Oh, no, I just live nearby. I like to cook. So I just thought I'd, put some food in here." And that's happening more and more. And it's just so lovely to see that it's becoming really self-sustaining.
So this is a total aside, but if anyone out there is in the art world, Edie, I know you are doing this, but you all saw the slideshow at the beginning. I think we need a competition for the best designed fridge because they're pieces of art. I think that they are also places for artists to express themselves. And I think we need like a fridge. We'll do it, the four of us. Anybody out there, please do a fridge art competition because it'll raise awareness of the fridges. So let's get to, I'm hoping that with our audience today, at least one person, hopefully many more, want to start a fridge. So what would each of you say to someone who wanted to start a fridge? Like, what would your advice? I know this could be very long and complicated, but just sort of quick bullet points. What would you say to someone who wanted to start a fridge? And I will, before the three of them answer, I just want everyone to know that my nonprofit Change Food is putting together a guide to starting a community fridge. So if you just get in touch, we'll be emailing all of you after this. If you just let us know, I'm happy to send you a copy of this when it's done. I'm a little behind schedule, but what's your advice to people who want to start a fridge?
I think some of it is just around, knowing your framework. And this is probably the boring side of it all, but the standard operating procedures, right? Like, your food safety targets, your, what you want to put in your fridge, that every fridge is different that way. And I think that involves, taking the pulse of your neighborhood and talking to people and finding out what it is that's, will be most helpful to everybody. So I would just say, because I'm a list person, I think the standard operating procedures which you're going to have, Diane, would be terrific, because you don't have to reinvent. And I think, because so many people have done this now, it's really, use what's there and create your own.
Can you just first, for a non-business person, when you say standard operating procedures, what are you saying?
So, how many hours a day is the fridge going to be open? Like ours closes at night, are you going to have it open 24 hours a day? And who is responsible for opening and closing the fridge? Who is responsible for tracking the volunteers that clean? Edie, you were mentioning, tracking volunteers who are responsible for the cleaning side versus the distribution side or bringing food in. In our fridge, we also have a group of people that if we have excess, get excess food to other community fridges throughout Harlem and Northern Manhattan. So that food is really used by everybody who might need it. So I think, knowing exactly what you want that framework to look like, and so that you have guidelines, so that there, people have a way to navigate safely and confidently.
Sarita?
I think definitely gathering a team, like a core team, that's been very beneficial for our fridge.
What do you think a minimum amount of people should be?
I mean, as far as like the core, for us, there's four of us, I would say, right? And I don't think I think 3 to 4 is good. You don't want this huge list because then things will never get done, right? So you've got your core team that's committed, and you all kind of need to hash out, I think at the very beginning, which is what we did, and I think it worked well, is what our responsibilities are. And if they evolve or change over time, that's fine, but just so everyone takes responsibility for something. And then, of course, gathering the volunteers and just being very specific with what the volunteers are expected to do, or, you know, we don't want to overwhelm people, but we also want people to know that this is, if you're volunteering, we kind of need this set schedule or whatever you're signing up for, because I know that that's, Edie, you and Diane have been doing that, but I know, knowing what you guys have to do, it's a lot. You know, you need to get people committed to this, because just swapping out and having the fridge not clean. And that being said, our fridge is getting cleaned twice a day. And in between, my staff is probably looking and cleaning, maintaining the fridge like every 15 to 20 minutes, because it's just so busy there. So it is kind of an ongoing thing. Finding a host that's willing to understand that the fridge is not just having a fridge and pantry outside of your business space. That Caesar and I knew that from the beginning, and that was good, because we were prepared to deal with whatever happens in that 14 to 15 hour time frame that the restaurant's actually open. You know, if people are leaving boxes, you know, that corner can get very messy. There's boxes around, there's people gathering, like making sure people are wearing masks. So that's something that you need to have a host that's willing to kind of monitor the fridge, not once a day, not twice a day, but pretty much, you know, a couple times every hour.
Edie?
Yeah, I mean, definitely our volunteers, you know, starting out getting kind of systems in place, as Annette mentioned. And I think for us, using the technology has been really helpful. So now when a volunteer signs up for a shift or is assigned a shift, they receive an email confirmation. They also have an appointment put into their calendar. So I think that just makes it easy for everybody involved. Our volunteers are really busy people, and they're amazing to be donating so much of their time to this project. And, you know, the WhatsApp group has been terrific to, if there's something last minute, I can just post in there, and 9 times out of 10, somebody puts their hand up and says, yep, I'll go do it, you know. And our volunteers are essential to this project. And we are so lucky that we have such an amazing group. And, you know, and then even people who are just volunteering on their own, as I mentioned, the young woman who was cooking, there's another woman who is constantly cooking for the fridge. And, you know, she's amazing. And also just donating to the fridge. People really have taken it under their wings, so to speak, and just made it their own project and their own way to give back to the community. And it's so heartwarming. And it truly takes a village to keep this fridge going. And that's what we've got.
And just for anyone who doesn't know what WhatsApp is, it's a text messaging service. The other thing, I think a sign that our fridge is successful is that people now, just neighbors, will open the fridge and pantry to make sure it's okay, or to see. And then we have a private Facebook group, and people will post photos every day saying it's empty, you know, or it's full. And I think that is the goal, is to make it a community effort. When you start the fridge, I think you have to have a core team that is willing to invest a lot of time for, say, 3 to 4 months. And then it'll eventually start to take on a life of its own. It still has to be monitored, but you do need to, I mean, I was at least 40 hours a week. Like it was a full-time job when we started, which goes to Annette, government, why people, there should be like some people that the city hires that can go around and help, but that's me. Okay, so let's talk about food in the fridge. What kind of food is good for someone to drop off? I know it's different for all fridges, but from your experience, what do you think is the most helpful? The types of food, prepared, not prepared, etc. It's to all of you. Sarita, you start.
Okay, because I unmuted fast.
Yes.
I think probably because this was something that I learned very quickly too, is that, and I think we touched upon it, is that there's a spectrum of people coming to the fridge, right? There's people who don't have a home and they don't have a kitchen, so they need prepared foods. Very important. There's people who have a home and maybe have moderate cooking equipment, so they need somewhere in between. They might have a microwave. Then there's people who have a kitchen. They're paying for rent. They're paying maybe to feed their pet. I've met a few of those, and not paying for food for themselves. So fresh foods. Annette, you touched on that too. I think the lack of fresh vegetables and fruits, dairy, meat, all of that those things go fast. Eggs, fast.
Bananas. You can't even get them in the fridge before bananas are gone.
Right. And I think, it reminds me when my kids were babies and I always had bananas in my backpack because I was like, if they were starving, that banana, hold them over for a couple hours, right? Bananas are so nutritious. So, that's a whole spectrum of food. So you try, and I think we try at our fridge to keep all of those things in the fridge at any given time, because you never know who's going to be coming and looking for food. But for specifics, I'll let Annette and Edie jump in too.
Yeah, so I think, Sarita, I think you probably wrapped this up, but I think, for our community fridge, it's more of the fresh focus as opposed to prepared meals.
Okay.
I think part of it was, not wanting to monitor the prepared meals. I mean, you are right there, which is such a benefit for your fridge for sure. So I think, you want things that people are going to like too. So knowing who's around in your community, and knowing what might be seen in the stores, what people are buying there, you might want to replicate, I guess. But just being thoughtful. And again, I can't stress enough, the importance of talking to people. And, even if you're having a conversation with someone who maybe stops by the fridge, and just say, is there something that's not here that you would love to have that would be helpful, or, you're craving, I think is a way to also identify those items that might be good choices.
Edie, do you have anything to add?
I think one thing we noticed with East Village Neighbors when we started to realize that people needed help buying food was that, the food that the city was providing was not very nutritious, or, it was like the city schools were providing free meals that were kind of processed food, and it was something for people, but we've all been stuck at home, and if you're lucky enough to have a home, you really want to cook during this time because you've got time on your hands, and it's an activity, and it feels good, and so to be able to get people raw ingredients, I think is great, and that's a lot of the stuff that goes to waste. Here again, is vegetables only last so long. So it's great to have a place to donate them to if you can't, sell them or use them yourself.
Yeah, and I also think, and that is correct, and you need to get to know what your community needs. I think the need is so great right now. Anything that goes in the fridge. I mean, I saw a photo on our Facebook group. It was a completely empty fridge, and there were like 2 pieces of the ends of a loaf of bread in the fridge. Like, it had been completely cleaned out. So I think that as you're learning what your community wants, you're going to learn by trial and error. Like when we first started, I was putting food in the pantry, and I was putting a jar of peanut butter in. This man was going by, and he's like, "Peanut butter?" And I said, "Yeah, do you want it?" And I gave it to him, and I'm like, "Do you want bread?" He's like, No, I have bread." And he was like in tears. So we try to make a point of keeping peanut butter in, because we found that goes really fast. Bananas, anything dairy, milk. I mean, any dairy product will go super fast. So yeah, I think the fresh, whole, unprocessed. I find it funny that people put mac and cheese, boxed mac and cheese in the pantry outside, like the best mac and cheese restaurant.
I take no offense.
So Edie, I don't know if you can answer this, but what would you say to people who worry about putting cooked food in the fridge, like with regards to safety issues? Because that question comes up every now and then.
Yeah, and I think that I do try and tell some of our donors that there is actually the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, which covers people. So if you're a restaurant and you are worried about donating, or a shop and you're worried about donating something that you might get in trouble because somebody might get sick or something, that you are covered, that nobody can point fingers and say, that you intentionally.
If it's I do want to interject, if it's a nonprofit.
And we are backed by Diane's nonprofit, Change Food, which is great.
Which is why I got really adamant about that, is because we are covered under that law now. So anybody who wants to start a fridge, find a fiscal sponsor, start your own nonprofit, or somehow connect with a nonprofit. And then you won't have to worry so much about people who are preparing food. Like, as long as it's done in good faith, you can't be sued.
And the other thing, of course, is our volunteers are also always checking. And so if they see something in there that they're worried about, we just say, compost it or throw it away. Let's not take chances. So, but as Diane said, everything goes very quickly. So it really hasn't been an issue.
I have seen other fridges, Diane, you probably have too, where they're a little more strict on what they'll accept, and probably that could be also because they aren't backed by a nonprofit. For us, because we do have that covered. Also, just to reinforce labeling of prepared foods, ingredients, and dates. Again, for us, they're just flying off the shelves, but it's very important to date it and label with what's in it.
Yeah, we have like a little thing to put pens in, and we have stickers, and we have like wrap, and the food goes so fast that we're like, we don't even have to date it because it goes so fast. But it is very good SOP, standard operating procedure, to date and label. And some of our volunteers will actually put ingredients in because they are sensitive to people with food allergies and people who have certain dietary restrictions, which is great if you can do that. Okay, so I want to get into the cooking part of the show. Just so everyone knows, we pre-recorded a couple cooking demos from Annette and Sarita. We thought that for time's sake, that would be better. But let's start with Annette. Is there anything you want to say to sort of prepare us for your video?
Yeah, this is one of the simplest things you can do to address food waste in your own home. And it's a great way to have a positive impact, I think, in a health way about, knowing what ingredients go into a thing as simple as broth. And this just happens to be vegetable broth. So this is not complicated, and many people may already, do this, but I'm always surprised at the number of people who don't do it. So, or aren't aware that they can. So here we go.
Tony?
Hey everybody! Today we're going to make something really fun, nutritious, and delicious, and it's vegetable stock that we're going to make from vegetable scraps. Something that you might already have a bit of in your kitchen, or at least if you're cooking on a daily basis, you would happen to have some spare pieces of trimmings and peels that you could make vegetable stock from. So there are a few reasons why it's a good idea to do this. One is that you've already paid for this entire carrot, right? But if we peel it, part of that price per pound that you paid for, could be going in the trash, right? But you did pay for it, and you paid for perhaps this end too, right? So these are all scraps we can add to the stock pot, right? But this on its own isn't going to make vegetable stock for you in one day, right? So I keep a bag like this in my freezer, and I add to it throughout the week. Sometimes a couple weeks it'll take, and once it gets filled, we're going to have what's going to be, the makings for the start of stock. Some other things that you can put in. So yes, we have vegetable peel, maybe from potatoes, maybe trimmings from asparagus or peppers, sweet peppers. I wouldn't necessarily use hot. But what about these papers from garlic? They have flavor in them. And, if they're clean and not right from the garden, it's fine to use the trimmings from this too. So I would use garlic paper, right? Flavorful. And you can actually, it has an aroma too. Same thing with onions. So if I'm prepping onions for a saute or for the base of a soup maybe, I would use all of these trimmings as well. You'll see in my bag, I also have some other items like trimmings from celery, the leaves from celery. And then, you know, as long as something is not spoiled, it's really okay to put in here. So it could be a little tired, but, you know, say we've got the end of some thyme here. So I would strip off my thyme leaves, you know, to use in my soup or my stew maybe. And then the stems that are left could also go into my bag with my scraps. So now what do we do with it? So we want to make like a big tea bag, you know, and if you don't have a bag like this, these are pretty easy to find. This is unbleached cotton, but you know, you could use cheesecloth, which is, you know, a thin cotton, right? That you could wrap up all this in, or a vegetable bag of sorts that's a mesh bag. So basically, you know, I'm making a tea bag and I put in all of my vegetable scraps and herb scraps and tie it up. All right, and then this is going to go into a big pot of water. I will bring this to a boil and let it simmer maybe for an hour, maybe longer, depending on how much water I have and how much vegetable stock. We're going to do a little TV magic here. So, you know, when this would be done, I would take my tea bag out, or if I had just put the scraps in, I would strain, all right, over a bowl and come out with this beautiful stock, which is rich and you know exactly what goes in it. So this can be used, you know, down the road. You can make soup with it. You can, I'll be sharing a bean soup recipe. You also can make, you know, use it to make your rice, cook beans in it if you've, you know, want to boost the flavor profile. And then you get to control what goes in it in terms of salt. If you look at like a box of stock in the store, you will find there are lots of ingredients beyond vegetables. Sometimes there is sugar, sometimes there's pear puree. So, you know, this way you get to control what exactly goes into it and you economize and keep a lot of vegetable scraps out of the garbage. And so we save the environment as well. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, tune in later. We'll talk. Bye.
Thank you so much. I forgot to unmute myself. Annette, thank you. That was wonderful. So I have a question. The tea bag. So I think it's amazing because that is food still, and you're getting all the nutrients from it. But when you take that tea bag of vegetables out, what are some suggestions of what a person can do with that?
Well, I guess normally, I mean, when I used to live in the country and I had a big backyard, it all went to compost and ended up in my garden, right? So it was a great way to recycle in that manner. You know, I've seen demonstrations where people dry out all of that vegetable, cooked vegetable scrap, and then puree it, and sometimes add it to maybe a zucchini pancake or what else? I mean, you could use it like a flour in a way if you were doing some sort of vegetable, you know, pancake type of thing where it would fit the flavor profile. I mean, I think, you know, you're reducing it a lot just by cooking it, and you're not taking up as much space, and you are getting nutrients out of it, which would have been lost before. So, you know, I don't think the city is now doing composting. I could be wrong, but I know that may have been suspended during the pandemic. But as soon as that starts up again, I will be, you know, taking my scraps the cooked scraps to compost. And you can usually do that at your local farmer's market too. If you live in a city, they usually have composting stations at some of the larger markets too.
Okay, so I'm throwing this question, and I don't know if any of you can answer it, but do you know, putting, let's say, that type of food in a garbage disposal versus disposing, let's say you can't go to compost, what are both a no-no? Like, I really don't know. Like, I'm asking because I really don't know. What do you say? Because people say, oh, just put it in the garbage disposal.
So I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but when I lived in DC, someone said to me, "Now, why are you using your garbage disposal? It's so bad for the environment." And I inquired as to why, and they said that it somehow makes its way into the, wastewater stream, which would make sense because it's going down your drain. I had heard that in New York City, we never had we don't have wide use of garbage disposal because trash would, if you had a private carting service, it was done by weight or volume, and that would come back. So I don't know. I'm not sure.
So wait. We don't have garbage disposals in New York City because the trash companies want heavier trash.
I knew someone who was in the restaurant industry a long time ago, and that's what they told me. So this is all secondhand. I can't verify any of this. So, do research on your own on that topic. I don't have a garbage disposal. I don't. I have had them, but I don't have one in New York.
So we did. Oh, go ahead, Edie.
I was just going to say one quick question in our chat box. If you could just say for chicken stock, it's a similar thing, correct?
Yes. I would, sometimes I save pieces from chicken. Like if I cut up a whole chicken to use, and I have, skin and, chicken fat and pieces of chicken, I usually throw that in a separate bag in the freezer. And then I can add that also to my vegetable scraps if I want a more robust flavor. I selected vegetable stock for this exercise just because, vegetables are typically more accessible, and some people don't eat meat, or poultry. So that was the decision there. But I do eat chicken, and I save chicken scraps. And even, if I roast a whole chicken, I might save the bones and throw them in the freezer for, later.
So you mentioned that you'd be doing a bean soup later during the video. How would someone use this stock to make a soup? Like what are some things that you could add? And is the bean soup the recipe that you gave me that I'm sending?
Yes, everyone will get the recipe. It's a really simple recipe, and you can really use what you've got in your fridge or whatever flavors you like. You can use a singular type of bean, or I like to use a mix of beans just for color and texture, changing it up that way. But, like if you had a couple of carrots, a couple of stalks of celery, a large onion, dicing all those three ingredients, say, in cooking, it's called a mirepoix, or, this holy triumvirate of flavor profiles and textures. You saute that for maybe 10 minutes in a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. And then, you can add your beans and your broth, say maybe 6 cups of broth to that, and let it simmer. You can add pieces of chicken you might have left over to the pot later in the process of cooking. You could add, chop up some ham, bacon bits, that you might have scraps of, sausage. It's really, however, what you have in the fridge and what you want to add. Sometimes people put in pieces of bread, a little Parmesan cheese too, to mix it up a little bit, a little more Tuscan focus with that. But I think, soup is so forgiving. And it's a great way to use up leftovers, which is what I always try to do. I mean, I don't like wasting food at all. And, when I have to end up throwing something out because I forgot about it, it makes me upset. So I do try to go through my fridge at least once a week and kind of see what's in the corners and pull things out and say, how can I resurrect this for dinner tonight? So
basically, because I'm not a chef, everyone. If I'm making the soup, and you said it was forgiving, so you don't have to worry so much about ruining it by overcooking it, or it's.
No, I mean, I'm a big taste tester as the process goes through, and Sarita, you probably, and Edie, maybe you too. It's like, I like to taste as I go, and find out how much salt I might want to add, or, ground pepper or herbs, if I have some fresh herbs. So, it's really what tastes good to you. I'm also a big believer of not necessarily following a recipe. A lot of people like those guidelines. I like to wing it, and I think you can do that more in savory cooking, obviously, than you can in pastry. And I'm not a great pastry chef because that is more rigid. You have to follow the rules and the ingredients for reasons. So anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. So let's set up Sarita's video and watch her cooking demo. Is there anything you want to prep us with, Sarita?
Surprise, surprise. You'll be seeing me make mac and cheese from scratch. That's it. I'm not going to give away anything. It's very simple, but it is the difference between making it from scratch and making it from the box. So let's watch that.
Okay, Tony, thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Sarita Akia and I'm the owner of Smack, short for Sarita's Macaroni and Cheese in New York City. Today I am going to walk you through how to make a very simple yet delicious mac and cheese. Our full ingredients, they're all right here. It's very simple. I've chosen a couple different cheeses. You can use one type of cheese, 2, 3, 4. I've actually used 3 types of cheeses and I've doubled up on the cheddar. I'll show you why later. I've got some elbow macaroni here. I've got whole milk, some breadcrumbs also for later, all-purpose flour. We also have butter here and salt and pepper. So as you can see, this is a very simple ingredient list. All right, to start, we're going to preheat our oven to 350. Salt your water. Here is the key step. It's the bechamel. But if you don't take your time with it, it messes up your whole mac and cheese. So first we're going to take our whole milk and we are going to microwave this. I'm going to start with about a minute. We don't want it to boil. We just want to get it close to the boiling point. So I put that in for a minute. Now I'm going to take my butter and I'm going to melt it. All right, so let me check my milk. Let's see here. Ooh, I have a little bit of spill. It is hot and a little dripping, but that's okay. So we've got nice hot milk. So I'm going to turn my heat down to like a medium here now because I'm going to start adding my flour shortly and I don't want to burn my butter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my flour just a little bit at a time. The next step is we're going to slowly add our heated milk. All right, let's make sure I don't make a huge mess of this. There we go. Look at that, ambidextrous today. All I'm going to add to this bechamel sauce is I'm going to put in some freshly ground black pepper. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt. We can always do salt to taste later. Depending on what your taste for salt is, and also some cheeses you use are saltier than others. So I just put a little bit now, and let's check this bechamel out. Let's add our pasta in. I'm using elbow macaroni. Now you don't want this at boiling point. I'm going to turn the heat off on here because it's going to start to boil. It's thickened up. So our pasta's done, so we're going to drain it and rinse it. All right, cool that down so it stops cooking. And we're into the final steps now, everyone, which is our completed bechamel right here. We're going to pour that into the mixing bowl. It's nice and thick, creamy, smooth. Oh, yummy. I'm starting to get hungry. I hope you guys are too. All right, and now I'm just going to add my cheeses in. And now we are going to add our pasta. So just want to make sure that it's drained well. All right, so my pasta's going in, and so you just want to mix that up, get everything covered nicely. It's also a very fun activity to do if you guys have children at home. This is such a hit to cook with the kids. All right, so we're all mixed up here. I'm going to transfer that to my cast iron skillet. Again, if you have a casserole dish, baking dish, all of those obviously work. So last step is I've kept some cheddar cheese on the side. I've already started to add some breadcrumbs. I'm going to add some more in here. And then I'm going to mix this up. And I do this so that we actually have a nice crispy top at the end. So if you like a crisp top, I recommend mixing your breadcrumbs with your cheese. And then you're just going to sprinkle that over the top of your dish. So you can modify some good vegetables to add in. Mushrooms are great, broccoli is great, scallions, tomatoes, peas. Honestly, there's so many things you can add in different meats. You can add in herbs. There's so many things you can do, and you can just do that straight into the mixing bowl with the cheese and the pasta and the bechamel. So whatever you want to add in there, I mean, big chunks of broccoli, you can't go wrong. Broccoli and mac and cheese is delicious. And our last step is we're just going to bake this baby. So we're going to bake it at 350. I'm going to put the timer on for 12 minutes. So 10 to 12 minutes is good. And at the end, I'm going to broil it because we like to have that nice crisp bubbling top. So I'll broil it for a few minutes at the end. Our mac and cheese is ready. So let's grab this lovely. Ooh. All right. So this is it.
Thank you so much, Sarita. So I just want everyone to know that there's a much longer version of this video that includes vegan dietary restriction options while she's making it. We edited it down for the sake of this. So my main question, Sarita, do you still eat mac and cheese?
I still eat mac and cheese. Not like I did when, 15 years ago when I was eating it every day, probably 3 meals a day because I was at the restaurant 18 hours a day. But now I literally, the kids all want it constantly, right? So I probably, I let them have it once a week. And when they have it, I'm like, yeah, I'm having it too. I'm not sick of it. Because you could do so much with, there's just so many different variations. And they all taste different. I don't know if you've tried we do a masala mac at the restaurant, which is our Indian version of it. And it just tastes something completely different than probably what you've ever tasted before. So it's nice to be able to differentiate. Yeah. Even though it's all mac and cheese, they're all very different.
And you will be sharing the recipe with us that we can send out to everyone?
Yes, most definitely. Very easy recipe. And this is just the base, and then you could do what you want with it.
So great. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. I can't wait to do both of that. I know I should make stock more often, but I've moved recently. I have a kitchen actually now, so I can do that. So, okay. So I have my mac and cheese. I've made my soup with my stock. What do I do? How do I get it in the fridge? I have some, I eat some myself. I have all these leftovers. So what are best practices for getting that food from your kitchen to the fridge?
So for the mac and cheese, there's 2 different ways you could put it in the fridge. The way we do it at Smack, that you saw that step where everything was in a bowl. So actually, because we have baking instructions printed out and already, set to go for some of our customers, we literally saran wrap it cold. We put it in a baking container, which is like a paper container, and we put the baking instructions in and put it in the fridge. So people can actually, if they have an oven, pop it in the oven and bake it fresh so it comes out bubbling.
You bake it, wait, I'm sorry, but you bake it in paper?
Yeah, we found these years ago. We were really looking for we hated the aluminum foil containers. We didn't want to use those. This is close to shortly after we opened, and we spent a year researching takeout containers, and we found these paper compostable containers. They're from a company called Novacart, but they were new. They were coming directly from Italy. They were new on the market, and now you'll see them in a lot of baking, for cupcake liners and whatnot. They're like a dark brown color. They're very common now. At that time, they were, and we ran with it. We're like, this is what we want. We want compostable containers that can withstand, again, microwave, oven, and a small amount of broiling. Because once you get up to that high heat, so that's what we put in. That's what we put in for all of our to-go mac and cheese, but also into the fridge if it's cold. Now, if you're making it at home and you have it baked, again, you can just separate it out, portion it out, put it in whatever container. I always do like to recommend putting into something that people can throw into their microwave though. So a paper container as opposed to an aluminum container,
Right.
just because you don't know how people are going to heat this up at home.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the soup, I mean, I don't know any other good way than a plastic container that's, easy and I suppose you could use mason jars, but I think, that gets to be costly too. While I love mason jars, I use them all the time, but I think, if you're putting into a fridge, making sure it cools down before you put the lid on is key here too. And then labeling what's in it. And maybe put on a suggested use by date. And I usually go 3 to 4 days out. I think probably you can get away with going a little bit longer, but in case somebody takes it home and, forgot about it for a couple of days, just, I try to give a recommended use by, and which usually is 3 to 4 days from the date I've made it. So just to be on the safer side.
So you put the use by date on it, not the date that you made it?
I would do both. I mean, just because that's what I do, just because I think, not everybody translates the date that it was created, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, Sarita, with yours, your people are eating that right away, right? I mean, and I'm not, probably with a soup too, people are going to eat it right away. So maybe the production date is fine, I think, I try to give tips wherever I can. But Sarita, you also know the whole food safety side of it. So you're following all those rules.
Another thing we've gotten donations of at the fridge, which we really appreciate, is used takeout containers. Run them through your dishwasher. They're absolutely fine. And they're really useful for us. There's a restaurant who's been donating to us, and we supply them with takeout containers. So again, that's being kind of environmentally friendly and useful for the fridge.
Okay, so this is a good time to transition. I see Emily has put a question here in chat. So I think I have talked enough for today. So Sarita and Edie are going to take over the Q&A section. Why don't you guys go ahead and then maybe you can answer Emily's question.
Frozen items into the community fridge. We do. Sometimes we put the mac and cheese, Sarita's mac and cheese, which is great. So then people can, keep it and have it for when they need it. We probably actually could do more frozen items in the freezer. I think sometimes we forget about that, but we have gotten donations of frozen meat, of veggies. Anything else, Sarita?
No, there's been Emily Slater. Thank you for that question. Just for everyone, the question was, do you put frozen items in the community fridge freezer? And some fridges around the country I've seen don't even have a freezer. We do have a small freezer on top of ours. But Edie, you're right. We put meats, veggies. We'll put some of the smack from the restaurant. I have seen people drop off some smoothies, like they're like single serve smoothies, and those go directly in the freezer. I know personally when I go through the fridge and just look around, if I see meat in the fridge, I usually will just transfer it in the freezer just to be safe. More so when it was warmer in October, in the winter months, it seemed fine just to put it in the fridge. But still, just as a safety precaution, I always like to be as cautious as possible.
I also want to
go in there as well. It makes it last for longer. People.
I also want to just interject. Sarita is really playing down the mac and cheese in the freezer and the fridge. Like Smack puts these large mac and cheeses into the fridge and freezer all day long. They also have it set up on the website, or if you go into order, you can actually buy a donation of a mac and cheese to be put in a fridge, which I think for anyone who wants to start a fridge or who has a fridge, if you go to local businesses and maybe try to convince the people there that people could come and buy order of what they sell, and that could then go and be put into a fridge. I think that's a fantastic idea. And Sarita, I can't thank you and Caesar enough for all the donations and the giving that you guys have done to the community.
This fridge has paid me back 100-fold. And honestly, in the warmth and the love, and to be quite honest with you, we've been putting a lot of mac and cheese in, yes, and it got to a point where we're like, okay, how do we continue doing this? Because it is, pretty large expense for us. And that's when we came up with the donate a meal through our customer base. And, we'd be surprised, literally just last week, someone donated 200 meals. So I reached out to him online and I was like, how do you know about SMAC, or do you know about us, or do you know about the fridge? I'm just wondering where this generosity, kind of stemmed from. And he had heard about us through a community garden network. And him and his wife were volunteering time at a community garden a few blocks away, and their network there had said, hey, did you see there's a community fridge and it's outside of SMAC and you could do this? And sure enough, he went. So you never know where the gifts are going to come in from. And I think a very important part, and we maybe didn't stress this enough, is just talking about it, like just getting the word out. And as much as I sometimes do not like social media, it's been helpful. It really has. There's been so many people who will just stop in the corner. I see this every day. Take a picture, and they're just Instagramming it. Community fridge at 12th and First, and this is why we're getting so many people just dropping off a few things every day. This is what's built up our fulfilled fridge, really.
That's actually a good transition to Cage Ames had in our chat box a statement actually about fridge on the Upper West Side that they're involved with. And this person, Cage, did a food drive in their building and got about 400, including 24 jars of peanut butter to put in their fridge. So there's so many different ways you can help. And another thing I say to my volunteers is when you're going to your favorite stores, just make sure they know about the fridge, and would they like to donate? They can talk to their friends in the neighborhood. There's so many different ways that you can help to keep the fridge full.
I just want to interject. Lisa, who is on YouTube, she asked if our organization is open to internship opportunities for the business side of things. She's writing from Italy, so I don't think she can come in and physically be there. But Lisa, just to answer your question, if you want to volunteer with Change Food, my nonprofit, you're more than welcome to. And we can put you in touch with Edie to see if there's a way, if you'd like to help out from Italy, to see if we can work it. So yes, we're always open to volunteers and people helping out. I think what we would do the most is try to encourage you to start a fridge in your area, but we can talk about that offline. So we will connect with you.
I wanted to just give a shout out to Alta, who's been giving some very encouraging messages to all of us throughout this whole hour and a bit. Thank you for all your positive feedback on the demos. And you wanted to know where the fridge is located in the East Village. Ours is at 197 First Avenue at the corner of 12th Street. And then Annette, you can let us know the exact location of your fridge as well.
Sorry about that. Yes, we're right on the corner of 120th and Lenox Avenue, and it's right in front, it's on the side of Setapani Restaurant. So it's very easy, and I'll put that in the chat as well.
Also, for any of you who are in any other part of the world, there's an organization called Freege, F-R-E-E-D-G-E, and I think it's freege.com or freege.org/locations. They have a map that they're building of fridges around the world. It is by no means exhaustive. There are so many fridges popping up that it's impossible to document them all, but people are trying to. So try that website to find and to see if there's a fridge in your area.
Also, Mary P had commented on the community refrigerator and made this very lovely comment about it really is not just about the food. The food is obviously super important, but about community support and presence, 110%. Mary, that is what we're all seeing. And we're all coming from it at different angles. And we all have the same thing to say, is that it just has enhanced our presence in the community and getting to know others in the community. And like Diane said, she was in these fields for 25 years, Diane, and she met more people in the last probably year than she had before. Same with me for 15 years. It's the same thing.
Well, you think about it, I'm what, 4 short blocks down the road from you, Sarita. We had never met each other until the fridge, and Edie's just up the road. Like, it is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mary P. also asked the question about, New York City, we have a lot of fruit and vegetable vendors just selling fruit and vegetables on the street. And can we get, they probably have leftovers of produce. Can we get them to donate to the fridge? That's a great question. Any thoughts?
I haven't asked them to donate, but every now and then someone will give me, like when I was at the fridge, they would give me cash, like $20 or something. When that happens, I go to one of the vendors and I buy food. I figure their margins are so slim, especially right now, that I would rather try to take something like money that's been given to us and buy the stuff. But that is a great idea. I mean, we could ask them what they do with it.
Yeah.
Do the rest of you?
I think it's sticky. It's difficult because I know a lot of these restaurants are also having a very difficult time, and food vendors and things. So what I always try to stress with my volunteers is to say, do you have food that will go to waste otherwise? Not, can you give us food? It's, really make them understand that we're not asking for them. We know it's difficult for them right now. We're not asking for them to just give us things. It's more about, if you can't use something, we have a way for you just to, help people with it.
The other thing I think is really important is, if you are going to be taking donations from a small business, to really make sure you promote them on social media. So Sarah Mills, who is here helping monitor our chat, she is our Instagram guru. So, Lepan Quotidian, Boris and Horton.
High vibe.
Thank you. I had high and I was getting to, so we have, sorry?
Divya.
Yeah. So we have businesses that every week, East Village Organic. I mean, we have these people that, so we will make sure we have photos of the store, the shop, the food, people putting it in the fridge. And if you're going to have a fridge, we think that's a way you can give back, because small businesses now are struggling so much. The least we can do is try to send more people their way.
Absolutely.
I'll also throw this out too, just so it doesn't all see, it's not always a bed of roses, right? You are going to get no's. You're going to get people who, even maybe on the outside it looks like they can give, and maybe they can, and it's just not aligned with what they want to do. And even as a business owner, I still have a hard time when I approach other neighboring businesses and they say no to me, because I'm not taking it personally, but I'm also like, I'm going through this as a business owner, and I'm still, I know there's a way for you to do something. So I have to get better at that personally, just to say, okay, and move on, go to the next person. So you will get the no's, and you just move on, because you will eventually get enough people helping and contributing. But again, not everyone's going to align with a community fridge. It's just how it is.
And I think what's important is that it's a no judgment. Like, we have no judgment around people saying no. We also, I remember with us, we had the issue with somebody was convinced that people were taking food from the fridge and selling it on the street.
Yes.
And we had a huge internal discussion, and we decided, you can't steal a gift. It's being given. And that if someone feels the need to do that, all we can do is wish them well. Mm-hmm. We don't know people's motivations. We don't know their fear. It's a lot of very scared people. So all we can do is, send love.
So Rita, tell the egg story.
Yes. So at the very beginning, I feel like this is like within weeks, maybe, or within the first month of having the fridge open. This was some of the concerns were popping up on our neighborhood group, that maybe people were taking too many things, and I'm at the restaurant obviously frequently, so I feel like there's such a few percentage of people that do that. But one day the fridge was almost empty, but we had 4 dozen eggs in there, and a gentleman, probably in his 50s, came by and he had a reusable bag and he was like, oh, I love eggs. And he started to put them all in. So I was like, it's not for me to judge, but there's nothing else in the fridge. So I said, yeah, take whatever you need. But, I was kind of like, someone else may want to come by, as friendly and as kind as I could be, just because we were kind of sussing it out, feeling out like, how do we deal with this, right? And then him and I proceeded to talk for the next few minutes. And he was like, oh, yeah. He goes, but these eggs, this is all I'm going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next 2 weeks. I'm like, take the eggs, just take them all, again. And at that point, that was the last time I ever said anything like that to anyone at the fridge, just because we don't know where people are coming from. You don't know what the use is. And it's not for us to assume or judge or guess or even say anything. It's, we put this fridge out there, we have it right there, take what you can. So we let that be. But for the most part, like I think we've all seen, is that the majority of people are just taking a few things and coming back. And if there's people who are taking more, they could be feeding a community, they could be feeding a family. They could also not want to leave their apartment for a week. They're stocking up for a week.
Sarita, that's so true. And I was just going to add that, I know of a couple of people that use our fridge who are gathering for people in their building, that are seniors who don't want to be exposed necessarily. So yeah, people, are taking what they need, right? And yeah, we don't know their individual circumstances for sure.
Yeah.
I also just want to mention, Elizabeth mentioned that there's a fridge at the end of the #1 subway at Broadway and 242nd Street. It's called the Friendly Fridge. Most fridges are independent. The Friendly Fridge is actually one of a group of friendly fridges. A Fridge is another group. So fridges can either be like East Village, and I think the Harlem one. No, I think, Annette, you said the woman in Harlem has a few.
So ours, well, we're sole. I think we're an individual one, but we're included in this network. So like we do share with other fridges, in Harlem, just because of proximity. So like when our volunteers, are either bringing stuff to us, I mean, they may also be making stops at other places too. So it's I don't think we're affiliated in a formal way, like
Right, like Fridge or,
but we do have a
fridge.
We've also had organizations that are specifically giving to fridges, and we've kind of gotten on their list. So for instance, around the holidays, there was a group who were giving away lunch meat. So we got a whole lot of ham one day, we got a lot of turkey another day. So once you kind of get on different lists, Diane, what's the one on Slack that we've been getting donations from, the vegetables?
They're like an intermediary now. They're Love NYC, and it's a group of volunteers who help get food in bulk, and then all the fridges in the New York City area can get food from it. They try to get drivers to deliver it out, but I think it's wonderful that people aren't just starting fridges. They're looking at how we can find the food for the fridge to supply.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that exists anywhere else in the country. So I have not come across it anywhere else. So do we have any more questions? No? So do we think now's a good time to wrap up? I do.
Yeah.
Oh, really, so much talking one person can do in a day. So I really want to thank our panelists, Edie, Sarita, and Annette, as well as I also want to thank the Biden Inaugural Committee for inviting us to be part of this National Day of Service. I also want to give a huge thank you to our volunteers. As Edie mentioned, we have like over 100. We have a team of people here who are, as I said earlier, monitoring social media platforms. People are volunteering their time. I cannot thank you guys enough. This fridge wouldn't happen without you. So thank you to all the volunteers who are doing anything all over the world today.
Yes.
I also want to give a thank you to Tony. He's been our Wizard of Oz. He's been pulling all the levers and switches today, which I would not have been able to do. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the National Day of Service is a kickoff for volunteering throughout the year. We'll be emailing all of you after the fact to send you the recipes and also to see if you'd like to continue with putting a fridge together, maybe being part of the East Village fridge or connecting with a fridge in your area. So do any of you guys want to give a final thought?
I just got a question regarding from Emily Slater regarding the organization that does bulk fridge donations. They're actually called Our Food NYC.
Oh, they changed their name.
Find them on Slack.
We can, and Emily, we can connect you with them because I
Yeah.
don't know, you have to get invited to be on their Slack channel. I think they're a little behind the scenes still, but they're a phenomenal network.
Yeah. And we'll follow up. Did you, if you mentioned that we'll follow up with some information for the attendees afterwards.
Yes, we will follow up with everyone. Also, I want to mention, if you're interested, we have a GoFundMe. So if you go to GoFundMe and type in East Village Neighbors, you can find us rather than me try to spell out the URL. Yeah, and and if you're doing social media, please feel free to tag us or follow us on Instagram. We're at East Village Neighbors, at Change Food, and it's at Eat Smack, Sarita.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's it. I mean, thank you. You've been a great audience. I feel like we had a great discussion today, and I hope we can do this again.
Diane,
great.
thank you for your great
Yeah.
work in pulling this together. It really was a lovely way to, channel our energies on the day of service. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Hi, I just want to say thanks, Diane. See ya.
I'll WhatsApp.
Yeah, awesome. I think it was great. Thanks.
Thanks.